Hello, everybody. Once again, I am Eric J. Olson, and today we have a special guest on. Sarah Wallace is a social media strategist. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's good to hang out.
Of course. So, before we dive into a whole bunch of questions about social media, can you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So I work a lot with small business owners and then personal brand businesses. So, like coaches, consultants, other strategists, to help them step out from behind their beautiful logo, step
Yeah.
out from behind those curated photos, stock photos, and step out from even behind inspirational quotes. I know we all love a good inspirational quote, but at the end of the day, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. So I really work to help bring that person to life and help them get comfortable showing more of them, their thoughts, their opinions, and their face, which can sometimes be scary.
You know what? It's so interesting that you mentioned that because I think there is safety behind a brand, right? And a lot of people are afraid to step out, like you said, from behind that brand and show themselves off. But I think if you establish a personal brand, it really helps with your business. And a lot of times people don't make that connection.
Yes. Yeah. And if you think about it, some of the biggest names that we feel loyal to are, I mean, and feel free to chime in here, Eric, but Apple. Why
Mhm.
do we feel so connected with Apple? We all have like a Steve Jobs
Yeah.
connection, right?
Mhm.
Tesla, Elon, right? For the ladies out there, Spanx, like we love Sarah Blakely. And so, yes, there is some things that need to happen, especially if you have a bigger company around that branding. But when you can have your CEO or your executives or you as the business owner of your personal brand start to step out, people are going to really start to feel connected and start to have things in common, or be able to relate to your stories, to your interests beyond just a mission statement.
Yeah. Why do you think it is that people connect so much better with other people than just with brands? Because like you mentioned in the beginning, Apple and Steve Jobs obviously is gone, but people actually do have a connection with Apple. Do they need more than that usually from smaller brands?
You know, so one of the questions that I get a lot is, how do I stand out? I'm in this saturated market as a health coach. I'm in this saturated market as a marketing strategist or consultant. I'm in this world, so I feel it. It's hard to really stand out when you're just like a beautiful logo, or like some really creative graphics, or maybe you have some cool things about you. But what's really going to make you stand out to the right people, because at the end of the day, we're not looking to stand out to everybody. We're looking to stand out to the right people, right? And so when you start to share your stories,
Hmm.
and we might get into this a little bit about Instagram specifically, but that platform is a great and easy way to share even your day to day. We joke about who cares that we're eating blueberries for breakfast, right? But you would be surprised. Does that exact moment matter to your audience? Maybe not that specific thing, but the sum of all those little things about what you're reading, where you're traveling to, what conference you're going to, do end up playing into your brand that they feel connected with and that they feel like they really know you. I mean, Rachel Hollis and Dave Hollis are a great example of that as well.
Cool. So I definitely want to do like a pretty deep dive into Instagram and Instagram stories in particular, because I think you're right. That's where like a lot of the personal aspect of a profile comes into play. But very quickly, a little programming note. If anybody has any questions about social media, Instagram, etc., post them in the Facebook Live. So if you're not in the Facebook Live, if you're watching this somewhere else, go over to Facebook, and it's live under Array Digital. So it's facebook.com/array slash this is array/live. So post your questions and I will ask them of Wallace. I'm sorry, Wallace, Sarah Wallace, before we're done at 12:30. Hey, also, if you would like to win a seat at her mastermind and a workbook that she's giving away, text in the word array to 757 333 3021, and we will pick a winner before this is over. All right, Wallace. Sorry.
That's okay. I used to work with a lot of Sarahs, and so that's what they called me, was Wallace. So I will answer to that.
Yeah, okay, so it's not that bad. I appreciate you trying to save me on that.
No, it's totally fine.
All right, so yeah, let's well, actually, first of all, you mentioned Elon Musk, and I listened to a couple of your podcast episodes, and you are an Elon Musk super fan, huh?
I am an Elon Musk super fan.
Is it Elon? Is it what he's doing? Is it Tesla? Is it SpaceX? Where did that come from?
He's such a good example. Like, how often do we say like we don't have time in our day? And here he is, like, managing like Hyperloop and like sending people to Mars or up to space, and Tesla, and doing all these other projects. And then I love that he has had a lot of backlash. He's failed so many times. There was an article written like 13 ways that like Elon Musk has totally like busted or whatever. And I was like, who has time? Like, there were 3 authors to this article, and I was like, who has time to like nitpick and find all his failures? But that's just such a good example that like those things are going to happen. You're going to fail massively when you're trying to do massive big things. But how much has he changed the world and had such a massive impact? So he's just an inspiration and a good reminder.
That's so interesting that you mentioned that about the failures. Everybody fails, but I think the key thing here is to have a lesson that you learn from each one of the failures and to get better over time. And going back to like personal branding and social media, do you think that is a good topic to bring up to your audience, your failures and what you're learning?
100%. And it's hard sometimes. Brene Brown has this, and you kind of have to play with when you bring it up, like when you're in the middle of it, may or may not be the best time, depending on what it is. But she has this, oh gosh, I just blanked on the term, but she has this thing where a lot of times we'll want to say like what we failed at like 5 years ago and bring that up. And that's not necessarily bad. I think that can absolutely help, but sometimes it can really connect us with our audience when we're saying like, I'm going through this. I'm not really sure how this is going to end up. And they feel like, oh my gosh, they're so vulnerable. I can relate to that. And they feel even more connected, because as human beings, it is, I don't know, I'm not scientific enough to know what it is. But we are constantly looking, our brains are constantly looking for ways to connect with people. So by opening up and showing that we're human, that's actually going to do a lot more, good for us than just completely like having it all together 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Yeah. So I know when I look at people online and they've got a perfect life, it kind of, I don't know, it's maybe a turnoff or makes me feel bad, but for some reason I don't really like it quite as much, or I guess I question if that's reality.
Yes.
When it comes to Instagram in particular, or maybe any platform that has stories, because Facebook has that now. Actually, a lot of platforms have that now. Do you think it's best to kind of be authentic, like we're talking about in stories versus posts?
The thing about stories, specifically on Instagram, is that that's a great place to maybe open up and be a little bit more vulnerable, because it's going to go away in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So if you're like, oh man, that was like, too much, or I'm nervous about that, I'm going to go back and delete it, it's going to go away in 24 hours. However, I also think that you can still do that in something that's going to be more permanent, have a longer shelf life. Because the same thing, people, like you're saying, don't necessarily want to see perfection all the time. They want to be able to relate. So, I think Instagram stories makes it easy to do that, because it's literally like just put it up, and you can share it, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to have like every single thing figured out. But I think it is important to bake that into the posts, the content that you're sharing on something that's going to stay as well.
Yeah. What about like when you're selling on social media? What are some maybe some tie-ins to being authentic to your personal brand versus your company brand? Are there any like best practices that you've kind of come up with when it comes to selling on social media without being sleazy or a jerk?
Right, right. Or feeling like an infomercial. I've heard that
Yeah.
before too, or like trying to manipulate somebody.
And you know, like,
Um,
and I've tried that before. Like in the beginning, I was, I just did not come off the way that I wanted it to, So it's kind of this subtle kind of skill that someone has to acquire.
It is. So I think the very first step of this is selling yourself. Because if you can sell yourself on you and your brand and what it is you're offering, it's automatically going to come out more genuine. Because how easy is it for us to like make a referral or word of mouth? And because we're sold on that. So the first step is getting sold on what it is you're selling.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yes.
then, um, and then the mistake that because it would be really like what people want when we have this conversation, Eric, is like a list of like
Yeah.
secret phrases or words, right? But that's the cheesy, sleazy things that you're learning.
Yes.
It's the long game, so it's building a relationship. And I'm sure some of your folks are in sales, and you know that already. It's like you can't just pick up a phone
Yeah.
and expect somebody to buy a $5,000 product from you. Maybe that might happen, but you really have to start to like dating. I know we use that analogy a lot.
Sure.
So how that plays out on social media is what I like to think of like this 3-part recipe for your content strategy. And that includes connection content. So letting people know about you, your stories, value content where you're sharing helpful tips and maybe it's inspirational quotes, but something to be helpful. And then also your promotion or sales content. And when you are doing kind of those three consistently, you've earned the right to sell something and you can feel really good about it. Now, and I want to give you a chance to chime in on that. I want to say one more thing about the value content, because this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see made on social media when people are sharing value content. They think, I just want to be really helpful. I'm going to give tips and advice and recommendations and resources. And I want to be so helpful.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
problem with that is that there's no shortage of content, right? Me and you can go on after this and type in, how to sell on social media, and there's going to be all kinds of tips and ideas. So in that value content, you also want to create some influential content where you're shifting your potential buyers' beliefs. And in order to do that, you have to understand where they are right now as an identity, what they're thinking about, and then who do they want to be? What do they want to have? And then coming up with content that helps them move there, not just through helpful tips and tricks, but by busting through limiting beliefs that in my case, maybe video isn't for me, or I hate my voice, or I'm a
Yeah.
bad writer, those type of things. So I just always caution on being overly helpful because that's not always going to move people. You got to come up with some busting through beliefs too to move people and let them know it's possible for them.
So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So your audience is going to be a spectrum of people that are, in different places in their journey, right? So maybe like what you just talked about is, maybe someone already knows that follows you. Do you talk to them as well as your ideal prospect, if you will? Like where in that funnel, if you will, if it's a vertical funnel, I guess, are you always talking to like the very top of it?
Oh, such a good question. So this is one thing when I learned it, it just blew my mind. So with our ideal client that, so many talk about in this niche, or like you got to find your ideal client. You got to
Yeah.
talk to them. Your ideal client is most likely not going to be an ideal client for your entire business. Instead, your ideal client is going to be by offer. So what I'll do is look ahead at the month and see what do I really want to promote this month, or what's on what either paid offer or lead magnet. And then based on that, who is that for? And then that's the person that I'll really tailor my content around that month.
I got you. So you're changing your message slightly based on basically the offer of the month. That's
Right,
cool.
right. Yeah. So if it's like a high level mastermind,
Yeah.
that's going to be different than like somebody who's just like trying to figure out how to post an Instagram story. And that can be a lot of pressure, and it can make your, because I've been there, it can make you like, I don't know who I'm talking to. This is overwhelming. I can't figure it out. But when you think, okay, who are you talking to by offer? That gives you some more space and some options to be able to dig into that.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Hey, reminder, if you have questions about anything to do with social media, post them in Facebook Live. We've got a couple of comments and questions coming through. Let me just scroll here. First, we have Tim McDaniel. He says, hi. So he tunes in quite often. Hey, Tim, what's happening, man? Let's see here. Oh, Shannon from our team, actually. What's the easiest way to direct someone to your website without linking to it? All right, this is a great question, I think, because obviously in Instagram, you only get one hyperlink. And I know that there's a couple of tricks that you can do, but yeah, what's a good way to get people out of social media and to your website? Or is that even desired?
Yes. So there's, I talk about, there's kind of two things with social media. You want to get people on social media, and then ironically, you want to get them off social media.
Yeah.
So get them onto social media, build a relationship, share that helpful content, let them know what you have to sell. And then, like Shannon's saying, move them off. And you can do that in a couple of ways. And it's not always, going to be like, oh, I said this and my website traffic flooded, right? But you can sprinkle these in. So on Instagram, you do only get one hyperlink unless you use something like Linktree. But sometimes what I'll even do, and if you have a virtual assistant or a team to help you with your account, I get a lot of good feedback on this, is I'll just say, hey, if you want this free resource, or if you want to read this blog, DM me directly and I'll send you the link directly. So they don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And then on something like Facebook, you can add links to, this is a really great trick. So on your cover photo, even on your personal page or your business page, there's an opportunity to include a link in the caption of your cover photo or your feature photos below. So sometimes I'll use that, and I've gotten traffic from that. So it is just kind of figuring out all these little ways, and on your podcast, mentioning something, making the website's easy to remember. But always having a call to action is really important. So that's a great point.
You know, I think that's the key right there, is having something of value that someone can get very quickly from you, versus just saying, like we've gone through this at our own company at Array Digital, where for a long time on the website, we just had sign up for our newsletter and no one signed up. Right. And then we added a whole bunch of copy beforehand, before the text box, that said, why you should sign up, and no one signed up. But then when we created a call to action and a lead magnet, which was an ebook, all of a sudden we started getting people signing up. Yeah. So that lead magnet is really, really important.
Right.
Very cool.
Yes.
But I also like how you direct people to your DMs, right? So take it to the DM, and that's where you can kind of do business, right? And send them the hyperlink. Nice.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Question here from Sean. If someone was going to start up social media presences with a new brand right now for work, let's say, what would be your top recommendations on how to go about that from the get-go? So you got no social media, what do you do?
So first of all, be thinking of like, where are your people hanging out with? Like, I like Instagram. That's a personal preference, right? Your people might be more on LinkedIn. This advice is going to apply to any platform. And I think my number one, let's see, two things. So one would be, almost, especially if it's on something like Instagram, to start posting content and to kind of start positioning yourself as a go-to resource, as an authority for people to get to know you, so that when they land on that page, yes, are you going to be getting a ton of likes and engagement right in the beginning? No. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. But at least when they're landing there, they know that like you're alive and you're active. So start to go ahead and share content. And then the thing, and again, what works for one person may not work for another. So this is what worked for me in the beginning, was doing collaborations. So just like you and I are doing today, Eric, I interviewed somebody every single week for over a year. And each week they would share, when I shared our interview or their article that they did for me, they would reshare it. And then I would bring in new people from their audience. And same thing when I would share their stuff, so it was kind of mutually beneficial. Not in the beginning, maybe when I had the smaller audience. But that's a great way to start networking and expanding. And the thing that people want is like 10,000 followers right out the gate, or 1,000 followers.
Yeah.
And that just, it doesn't matter. And you guys get this, like, it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 people in the room, if only 3 of them could ever be potential buyers. So that's why I like that collaboration idea, because you're ideally collaborating with people who have similar audiences, so that, as people start to join, it's not just, and hashtags, we could have a conversation about that. But I have found that collaboration of interviewing, guest blogging people has really been the best way to bring in the right people.
Got it. All right, cool. All right, we got a couple more questions. A reminder, and we need to talk about this masterclass, right? If you would like to get so it's called How to Be Influential. It's a masterclass and it's a workbook that Sarah puts out. She's providing a free copy to anyone or to someone who texts in the word array, which is ARRAY, to the number 757-333-3021. Couple questions, then we'll talk about that real quick. So Tim McDaniel again says, how do I become aware of the strengths and weaknesses of my current social media strategy?
Oh, so good. So that might be where you work with somebody on the outside, because sometimes it is hard to kind of see when you're inside your own jar. I wonder, and a lot of times too, we kind of have an idea of what our strengths already are. So I'd be curious, as a follow-up question, like what do you feel like maybe are your weaknesses? And where do you feel like you are succeeding? Because that's like, gosh, I'm trying to think like an example of that. It's like if your nutrition and your fitness routine, you just know like you're not getting the results, but like you're not really sure where. That's where hiring a personal trainer could come in. I'm not suggesting this isn't a pitch for myself, but sometimes bringing in somebody maybe like you and your team, Eric, to kind of help assess, okay, what's your goal? You're not maybe getting there as quickly or in the direction that you want. Here's some things that maybe might be able to help enhance your strengths. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times you need to look at the data, follow the data, right? So if you have a post that does very well, ask yourself why. What about this post? But it could be difficult to figure it out, right? Especially if that post is really similar to a post that you did a week ago that was pretty similar, right? But something's different. So if it's not the actual creative, then maybe it's the time of day or something like that, right? There's got to be a reason why it's different. Hey, what do you think about following people who follow people like you? Right. So it's kind of like a follow unfollow kind of concept in order to gain the attention of potential followers. Anything like that ever work? Is it worthwhile to reach out to people and follow them, hoping they'll follow you back?
That's such a good question, Eric. If you are genuinely interested in having a relationship, so where this might make sense. So if okay, my ideal client, especially for this like particular product or offer, loves Tesla, for example. Yeah. Maybe you go into Tesla's Instagram follower list and see who's following. And maybe you have your social media coordinator or an intern or a virtual assistant help you like go in there and start to be active, because it is social media. So a big part that we haven't really talked about much is being social. So you got to give as much as you want to get, and that's time consuming, right? And that's not as fun. But that's kind of that golden rule. Be social as you want people to be social with you. So that's not a bad idea. I wouldn't go in and follow people just for the sake of following them and then liking a bunch of their photos and then just like jumping back out. I think most people are onto that. And also, you want to make sure sometimes maybe that it's accurate, that is your ideal client. But I know a lot of people just go through a list. And again, it doesn't matter if you have 10,000 people in the room. If those people are not ever going to buy from you, it's wasting space and it's actually hurting you. It's hurting your engagement rate, which isn't going to get your posts seen as much. So you would be better off with 500 followers that are really active to give your engagement rate higher than 5,000 who are just crickets.
Yeah, one of the books that I need to read is I don't know the exact title, but something about 1,000 true fans.
Yes.
I've heard of that one a lot. I need to put that into my my wish list for sure.
Yes,
Cool.
yes, I've heard that.
All right, so reminder: we are going to be giving away one seat to Sarah's "How to Be an Influential" masterclass and the workbook that goes along with that. So text in array to 757-333-3021. So let's actually hear about that. Yeah, what is this masterclass all about? How did you even like get to the point where you created a masterclass?
And this is something that maybe is something, depending on your industry and your work, you might want to steal yourself. So what I did was I have a Facebook group, and then I just know from questions that I get some of the biggest struggles that people have, and one of them is selling on social media, seeing an ROI. And they're putting out great content. They're being consistent. They're sharing that valuable content, right? But something's still missing. And so I put together a workshop to help them start to see that ROI based on the feedback, the things that I knew my audience needed. And I charged a small fee for it. But what's great then is that I recorded it and can have that to use for something like this, or you can add it to your website and have somebody digitally download it. But it's all about being influential. And in order to move people into action, we have to create, Seth Godin talks about this, we have to create that tension, which can kind of be uncomfortable, but unless there's tension, there's no reason to move and to do something.
What do you mean by tension?
So kind of I don't love this term, but when I used to do sales, we called it like stirring the pain. So what is the problem? And sometimes you might be saying something like, oh, I'm stuck, or do you ever feel stuck? And that might be falling on dead ears, because people like, what do you like stuck? That doesn't mean anything. But when you really start to understand, like, what does stuck look like to that person? Like, is it they feel like they're on Groundhog every day, going to a job they don't like? Paint that picture as if you were getting a video. Then your words start to become so much more influential, because people are like, oh my gosh, they're in my head. They're talking to me.
Talking to me.
Yes. So you're influential by creating, or not creating, but by describing the problem and identifying the problem. And then also influential in understanding what your people need to believe to get from where they are right now to where they want to be. And so there's all kinds of like words and phrases and work that takes some work, some time to kind of sort out. And that's what we do on the workshop. In real time, because otherwise you're just going to be sharing helpful content that probably is valuable, but doesn't address the underlying belief that A, it's worth the investment, B, that it's for them, that they're even capable of it. So that's what we talk a lot about, is how to kind of hit those beliefs so that you're influential and not just helpful.
Gotcha. Okay. Is this like something that is for a set duration, 4-6 weeks, something like that?
It's an hour long. It's an hour long workshop.
Awesome. Gotcha. Very cool. All right. And then the workbook goes along with that. Awesome.
Yes.
All right. So we've closed the text messaging platform. We do have a winner. So
Okay.
I'll connect you with the winner, Sarah, but the last 4 digits of the phone number are 5855. So again, it's 5855, which I'm being told is Misty. All right, Misty. So Misty is the winner. So I will connect you with Misty after this. I really appreciate all your time. Is there anything else that you think that the audience should know about?
Well, thanks for having me. This was really fun. I think at the end of the day, like a lot of this also might come down to worrying what other people might think or worrying that you might fail, like we talked about it. But you just have to try, and you probably talk with your clients and your audience about this, like put it out there. It's a constant test, and what might blow it off the charts last week may totally bomb 3 weeks from now, right? Or 3 months from now. So it's just giving yourself not the label of ever failing, but just learning. So that would be my advice. Just continue to learn.
Yep. And if you fail, you'll learn, right? That's
You'll
the
learn.
takeaway.
Yes.
And just keep on trying.
Totally.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Sarah. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.